Hi guys, welcome to Cracku's video series. I hope you guys are doing well. In this video, we will be looking at XAT and we will be looking at tips and strategies how we can basically score a 99 percentile in XAT. So in this video, we'll basically be looking at attempt strategies, what should be the attempts, like what is a decent attempt, how you should be preparing for a particular section and everything that is to know. 99 percentile is like a thing that we are saying, but the idea is we want you to score as much as possible, and this is the video where we would basically be laying out everything, what should be the ideal approach and what should be the way you attempt a section, or like how do you do the questions and everything. We'll be basically discussing that. The reason to aim high in XAT is because XLRI, everyone who's appearing for XAT, the first college that comes to our mind, or like the only college that we dream of, is Xavier's XLRI. And for XLRI, we need to have at least a 96 percentile to actually be eligible for the interview process. So we need to be able to score this much. If you are a engineering male or a non-engineering male for their BM programs, which is business management program, you need to have like at least the 96 percentile. So in this video, we will be looking at the ways how we can prepare ourselves so that we can get this, and also clear the sectionals. Sectional cutoffs are also there. We'll be looking into all of it. So without further ado, let's get started. Yeah, so a quick overview of the exam. I'm sure most of you know that XAT has like 75 plus 20, which is basically 95 questions, and that need to be completed in 180 minutes. And you probably would also understand why I've written it like a 75 plus 20 and a 170 plus 10 is because the paper is divided into two parts. The first part is like the core sections, which has the verbal and logical ability. We call this the VALR. Then we have the decision making, which is DM, and finally the quantitative ability and data interpretation, QADI. Now the thing with this part is, this is the only part which XLRI considers for giving out the final percentage. So you need to be able to do well in this. The role of part 2, which is general knowledge, that is not that well known. I mean, probably they use it in the interviews, but at least for the percentile which is needed to get the calls, in that percentile, this part 2 is not used. The reason for the split is 75 questions are from part 1, 20 questions are from part 2 for GK. These 75 questions is split across all these three sections. And for these, you need to do it in like 170 minutes, which is 10 minutes less than 3 hours. And the other 10 minutes you get for part 2. So all in all, it's a paper of 3 hours. Now the marking scheme is +1 for every correct answer, minus 0.25 for each incorrect answer. So it's like a +1, 1/4 you lose, and minus 0.1 for skipping. That is something which is unique to XAT. What they do is, you are allowed to skip 8 questions. There will be no penalties. Once the 8 questions are done, for every consecutive question, like the 9th, 10th, 11th question that you skip, you will incur an additional 0.1 ka negative. So in that, it actually becomes very important for us to make sure that obviously we don't blindly go about like appearing for all of the questions, like doing all the questions, because there is a chance that, like, if we attempt all the questions, many of them might be wrong, and so we'll incur a minus 0.25 instead of a -1 if we had just skipped it. So we need to find that correct balance, and we'll discuss like what should be the balance and everything in this video. So stay tuned with us for that. Talking about the paper, yeah. So part A, this is the part where the percentile is made. So this is the part which we need to focus for the percentile, and this is the part where we need to do well. In this part, we have verbal ability and logical reasoning. उसमें से 26 questions आता है. Decision making has 21 questions, and QADI has 28 questions. A total of 75 questions. You get 170 minutes to attempt them. There is no sectional limit. That is the great thing about that. So what it tells us is, because there is no sectional limit, you can basically toggle between the sections. So that tells me that what I can do is like attempt all the sections once so that I have enough that I clear the cutoff, and then whichever section I'm good at, I'll go and like I'll attempt all the questions there, like maximize, because the goal at the end is to maximize our score. How do we do it? We make sure that we clear the cutoffs for all the 3 sections, and once I am somewhat confident, like okay, I've attempted enough here, I will be able to clear the cutoff. Once I'm there, then I pick the section which I am best at and give it, like I maximize my score there. Part B has general knowledge. There are 20 questions. You get 10 minutes for it. There are no negatives here. There are no negative markings in these 20 questions. So, and also with GK is like you either know it or you don't know it. So you just mark and let go. So these are the last 10 minutes ka. In this video, we will be discussing strategies on how we should be attempting these sections, what should be the priority order for them, and yeah, everything in between. If we look into the marks versus percentile thing, so if 99 percentile is your goal, if you consider this, again, this is a data. See, XAT ka data is not very readily available. So we had to collate this data from like, a lot of various sources. So this is basically an approximation. This is not exact. This is not exact. This is an approximation. But what we see here is like if you look into the 99 percentile, over the years, it has been somewhere around 35, 36. Right. So that tells me that for a 99 percentile, my target score should be around 38 to 40. Now, what is the total score that you get in XAT? You have 75 questions, and if you get all of them correct, then it's a 75 marks. So 75 marks may say I need to target 38 or 40. This is a great score in XAT. This will ensure you something around like a 99, 99.12-ish percentile. Right. And if you look into the Excel thing, which is 96, this is the for the people like me who are like male engineers or non-engineers. If you are someone who's considering XLRI a BM program, then 96 is the thing, and for that also you need somewhere around a 31. So a 31 or 32 would be like a decent score in that if you are attempting, if you are like thinking about XLRI. Other than that, if you are just someone who wants to get a 99 plus, in that case 38 to 40 should be the target score. So how should we attempt the sections? The good thing about XAT is they don't have sectional limits, like sectional time limits. So you can basically toggle between sections. So that tells me the first thing I should do is I should always start with the section I am most comfortable for 2 reasons. One is that I'll be able to sail through that section. So I'll save up on time. And secondly, I'll get some confidence. I'll be more confident that I'll be able to solve the paper. So always we should start with the section of most confident. This section with, for some people it might be VALR, for some people it might be QADI. So whatever that section is for you, you should start with that section because that will give you a confidence boost. You'll be able to do better in the, because that's like a psychological thing. Once you feel like, okay, I'm doing good in this paper, automatically you get more confidence, you are able to perform better then. Next thing is, not all questions need to be attempted. Obviously, there will be some questions which are sitters. Sitters as in like they did not take a lot of time. You could like just, you read it and like you are able to solve it. Some questions are actually time traps. They look easy, but when you start solving them, it's like, it's taking a long time. So what we need to do is we do not need to get hung up on the time traps. We need to avoid them at all costs. Avoid them at all costs. Time trap could be something like, in quants, there can be a question on, say, profit and loss. Now, profit and loss as a concept is not very difficult. But the thing is, they can be very calculation intensive. The thing is, they can have ambiguous wordings. So, those kind of things we need to let go. At least when we are attempting, we need to make sure we are attempting in cycles. Like obviously the strategy should be key, like I finish my all the 3 sections I'll have to attempt. Obviously, I'll have to attempt all the 3 sections such that I can clear the baseline cutoffs for them, and then I'll go to the section where I'm the most comfortable in, and वहां पे जाके फाड़ना है. We need to avoid ambiguous questions. What are ambiguous questions? Ambiguous questions come in quants not so much, but in DM sets, decision making, there can be questions which are ambiguous. There can be questions in VRC also where like the passage is very ambiguous, so you are not able to quite figure out what they are asking you to do. In DM sets, some questions can be like, we are not very sure what is being asked of us. Although, like, recently Saili ma'am had this conversation with the XAT convener, and he said they are trying, and that we've seen also in the last 2 years at least, a lot of subjectivity in the DM section has been reduced. It's become way more analytical, it's become way more structured, the DM section. So although the ambiguity has been reduced, but still there is some ambiguity here and there, and that is something we do not want. That is something we do not want to get hung up on. And because if we get hung up on something ambiguous, that is going to cost us time, that is going to cost us marks. And in these exams, we know ki like each and every minute is of utmost importance. And the other thing is practice elimination. Elimination for VRC, obviously. Elimination for the grammar questions, definitely. Elimination for decision making, most definitely. We need to eliminate the choices which are not working. Like this is clearly not the answer, eliminate it. And elimination for quants, in some cases, yes. In some cases, you'll be able to eliminate. Okay, but in quants, it's less frequent. But for the other sections like VALR or say DM, definitely elimination is the key to go. Right. Now, time distribution should be something like this, because 30 to 40 minutes in VALR, 45 minutes around in DM, and the rest of the time should be devoted to QADA. Why? I'll give you a reason. This is basically Saili ma'am's strategy, and if you don't know, she has been a topper not once, but like many times, the All India rank 1 in XAT. So this is her strategy, and she vouches for it. So basically what she says is VALR has a section, obviously because she is a teacher. So for her VALR is easier, but for any average student as well, VALR section gets to be easier if you compare it to DM and all, because VALR may you have questions like grammar, you have questions on fill in the blanks, those kind of things, they do not take up a lot of time. Critical reasoning and RCs, they do take up time. But grammar and all, those can be attempted very easily. Like a grammar ka question, you will need max to max 30 seconds, 35, 40 seconds if you know the answer. Fill in the blanks, and like, the critical reasoning may just say, those things, they don't take up a lot of time. So she devotes around 40 minutes to VALR, 45 minutes to DM. Now DM as a section is something which is not very rewarding. So spending a lot of time in DM does not essentially guarantee that you will be getting a lot of correct answers, because decision making, as the name suggests, is how I make a decision. Now, what the paper setter felt was the correct decision to make here, you might, on a personal level, you might not agree to it. So spending more time in this section does not essentially guarantee that we will be getting more marks. So this is not a very rewarding section, but we do need to clear the cutoffs, so we need to devote some time. So ma'am says, like, try devoting around 45 minutes to the DM section. Rest of the time you should devote for QADI. Why is that? Because that QADI is actually pretty interesting. The DI section, it can be thoda sa calculation intensive, but the thing is, there is not a lot of logical reasoning things happening, like in CAT sets. DI may, once you decipher the chart, you will be kind of able to solve the questions and all. And QADI is a section where you either get it or you don't get it. Even in VALR, even in VALR, you might not be very convinced, like, okay, this answer that I've marked for this RC ka question, is this the correct answer or not? You might not be confident, but QADI may, if you solved it correctly, if you know the formula, if you know the approach, if you solved it correctly, you're kind of sure, like, okay, this is the correct answer, I'm getting it to be correct. So QADI is that section which basically takes your marks up. And that should be the thing. You need to divide the time idhar mein on VLR and DM such that you clear the cutoffs. We'll discuss the cutoffs as well. Such that you clear the cutoffs, and rest of all the time give it to like push your QADI and take it up. That is a very ideal strategy. And if you're someone who's like actually aiming for 99 percentile, it would mean you have like a decent grasp over quants ke concepts. CAT se quants are somewhat easier, so that is also something which acts to our benefit. So this should be an ideal time distribution here. An ideal attempt should be around 60 questions with 80 to 85% accuracy. Now, obviously, if your accuracy is lower, you'll have to improve on the number of questions that you attempt. But around 60 questions should guarantee you the target score that you are dreaming of. Now, if we look into the marks versus percentile, this was roughly around from the last year, 2026. Again, this is like a collated data from various sources, but you get an average idea. So the thing is, the cutoffs for XLRI in every section is around 82, 85 वैसा वाला है. So this is something we need to focus on here. And this shows for a higher percentile in QADI, you will need to get a 17 or 18. But if you score somewhere around 10 to 11, you'll be able to clear the cutoffs easily. Similarly, for the DM section, if you score somewhere around 11 to 12, you'll be easily able to clear the cutoffs. Same for the VLR section also, if you score around a 10 to 11, you should be able to clear the cutoffs. So clearing the cutoffs is not that big of a challenge, right? But the thing is, after I've cleared the cutoffs, I need to make sure that my scores are maximized. So in that case, whichever section I am more comfortable in, I should be attempting more of that so that I can maximize my score. Now talking about the VALR, the number of questions is 26. So maximum you can score is a 26 here. If you look in here, the 99 percentile was at a 17. So which is like pretty less, right? If you compare like 17 or 18 out of 26 should give you a 99 percentile. Now in XAT ka VLR, the passages are little different from what you get in CAT. In CAT you get around 500 words, in XAT it's lesser, it's around like 350, 380 words, but there is a philosophical tone to it. It's not a very straightforward passage most of the times. There is like philosophy happening. Even if it's like a scientific passage, it's not going to be pure science, but rather it's going to be the philosophy of science. So those things we need to keep in mind, and based on that we need to select the passages properly. And now the goal is we attempt things that we know we'll get correct. There is no point in attempting everything, but whatever we are attempting, we should be somewhat sure that like we are doing it. So passage selection actually becomes important. And as I was saying, the passages can be thoda sa philosophical in nature. So there can be some words like last year there was something about the conduit metaphor. So like there will be words, there will be phrases which you don't quite understand, but at least two of the questions can be answered if you kind of understand the central idea. So for every passage, we need to focus on the central idea. The central idea basically tells us keep this 380 word thing, of which a lot of the words I didn't quite understand, but I kind of understood what the author is trying to talk about, kind of understood the central idea of things. So we should always focus on the central idea when we are doing the RCs. Critical reasoning is very important for that. Critical reasoning is very important for that because in RCs also they ask for critical reasoning questions, and critical reasoning individual one questions also they'll ask. Critical reasoning entails topics like strength and weaken. They entail topics like they'll give like say a smaller passage like a 180 200 word passage, and they'll ask you something, what can be best concluded from this passage, or what can be best inferred from the passage, or something like what best strengthens it, weakens it, what is the necessary assumption for it. All those kind of questions, they are very important for that, and they are important not only because they appear as standalone questions, but also because in the RCs they actually have those. In the RCs they will have these kind of questions. So critical reasoning as a topic which is not very prevalent in CAT. But for that, if you are aiming a high percentile, I would say we definitely need to do the critical reasoning part of it. Next, there's grammar. Grammar is easy marks. I know it might sound like, okay, sir, I've not done grammar for some time. The last time I did grammar was in class 10th. But the thing is, that has a tendency to repeat itself. Like it will repeat the kind of errors that they ask. There's a set. We've basically made a list of things. We've made a list like these are the things, like you check for the preposition error, you check for the subject verb agreement, you check for the tense consistency. So once you passed a sentence through all those checks, if you did not find anything there, it means the sentence has to be correct. And that has a tendency of repeating. Grammar mein we have two questions. In two questions, they basically give like 4 or 5 sentences and they'll ask which of these sentences are correct, or which of the combinations has sentences, all of which are correct. So let's say A, B, C, D, E are 5 sentences, and in the options they'll give A, B, E, or like C, D, E, and you have to pick out which option is there such that all the 3 sentences are correct. The easiest approach for that is, we have that list, go through that list, check each of the sentences, and grammar, done like a few these sentence correction questions, it is very easy. Grammar is a area which does not take a lot of your time. It is a very scoring, like 2 marks where you can guarantee yourself a 2 out of 2 in these grammar questions. You can guarantee yourself a 2 out of 2 in these grammar questions if you've done just the PYQs and few more questions. That also tells me for how we can approach these questions, the grammar or the critical reasoning, or the passages for that, because that passages can have some differences also. Like there are RC passages, there is also something called a poem RC. Now the poem RC is like they'll give you a poem, it has like 2 questions they have. So there also we need to focus on the central idea. We don't need to understand the poem as its whole, like what does each and every line mean. We don't need to do that, because the questions, what can be best understood from the poem, what is the author best trying to convey, those kind of questions actually come. So central idea actually becomes very important. And also, if you want to learn more about the tips and tricks and how we can approach these questions, so Saili ma'am herself has designed this course for XAT aspirants. So basically where she takes the live classes as well, and we have all these recorded lectures, we have all these practice questions for you to try out. So if you're someone who's looking for like a serious prep guidance, you can definitely check out our XAT course. The link will be there in the description. You can definitely check that out. Next, getting back to the vocab based questions, there will be 2 questions. But the thing with that is, vocabulary is something which develops organically. So you don't really need to put your mind in and use one of those books like say What Power Made Easy or something. You don't need to do that. The thing with XAT vocab questions is they are very much contextual based. Like you read the sentence, you understand what the sentence is implying, like what is it trying to talk about. And once you figure that out, you can basically eliminate the options. Okay, the sentence is talking about something like this, so this word is definitely not going to fit in this blank. So that way also, by elimination, you can actually arrive at the answer. So that is the VLR strategy. We need to focus on these areas. We need to focus on the central idea. We do not need to get hung up on details. An ideal attempt in VRC should be 16 to 18 questions out of the total 26. If you are appearing for a 16 to 18 questions, that should fetch you a 99% in VRC. The next section which we will be talking about is QADI. Now QADI stands for Quantitative Ability and Data Interpretation. Isme we have 28 questions. The best thing to do here is you have to solve in iterations, whatever you call it. What it means is scan through the questions. You'll see that there are clearly some questions which are easier, which looking at them instinctively, you can say, okay, this I'll be able to solve quite easily. Solve them first. Once those are done, then go for the harder questions. So solve in layers. Do not get hung up I'll do question 1 first and then I'll do question 2, then I'll do question 3. No. Instead of that, go through all of them once. Pick out the questions which you think are easy. These are the questions which I will be able to solve in one, because some of the questions are sitters. They don't require a lot of time. Pick out the sitters, do the sitters, because the goal again is to maximize our score. And how do we maximize our score? By doing the questions which I know will give me the marks. So solve in iterations. Do not get hung up on just one question or something that way. It's not an ego game. It's not a game कि अरे मैं कैसे solve नहीं किया, I am good at quants, I should be able to solve this question. It's not that. Please don't do that. What you need to do instead is नहीं हुआ रहने दो, let it go. Doesn't matter, I was not able to solve one question, it's fine, it's not the end of the world. Because even if I were able to solve it, I would have gotten 1 mark only. And based on the time that I've spent on that, if I had done 2 more questions, that would have given me 2 marks. So, that trade-off is there. It's not even a trade-off. It's the pure logical thing. You do not get stuck on any question. If you feel like a question you're unable to solve, let it go. Let it go. Don't play it as an ego game. And always solve in iterations. First, do the easy questions. Do a quick scan through. You'll be able to figure out, okay, like these are the easy questions. These are the questions I need to do. Do them first. Then do the second round and then do that. And another thing is, XAT has pure DI. It's not quant based DI or something like, it is quant based DI. It's not something like LR based DI. There's like a lot of logical reasoning stuff happening, or they've given you a table with like a lot of missing values and you need to basically figure out and all that. That is very rare in XAT. Mostly it is pure DI. Like last time we had something called a sunburst chart, like a big chart like that. So once you are able to figure out like how do you read it and what is the logic behind it, like how do you read that chart, the questions were very easy. But it took some time to like analyze that, like how do you read it and how do you make the table as such. So those are the things, it's purely DI, like you can solve them making equations and all that stuff. There's not a lot of logical thinking happening in this section. The quants is easier compared to CAT. So that tells me like if I'm someone who's preparing for CAT, and if I'm someone who's hoping to get a good percentile in CAT, getting a good percentile in XAT should also be easy, at least in this QADI section, because the kind of questions you get are a little easier when you compare them to CAT. Next is this section, as I said, is like the best for score boost. Why? Because if you're someone who's targeting a 99 percentile, I'm assuming you are also someone who's good in CAT quants. So for you, this section is going to be easier. And because this section is going to be easier, this section is where you need to draw most of the marks. What happens in DM is you are not very sure if the answer is correct or not. So there's a lot of ambiguity happening. So you are not very sure, even if you attempt the whole of the DM section, you are not sure you are getting like the full 21 marks or something. But in quants, if you're sure of a question, if you're able to solve it without making any silly errors or something, you know, acha, this is a correct mark, I'm getting a correct answer. So this section is actually best for score boosting. Ideal attempt should be a 20 or 24 questions with like high or decent accuracy. You should be able to solve like a 20 or 24 question. If you are like aiming for a high percentile, this should be a decent attempt for you. Next, we get to the more unique section. This is typical, this is like, only for that. No other exam has this decision making set. Now, throughout the video, I have been saying this a lot. You are not very sure if the answer that you're choosing is going to be correct or not. So, XAT has a little bit of ambiguity in the DM section. So, that is why we always suggest people to do not invest a lot of time in this section, because if you invest a lot of time and you get all the questions, there is no guarantee that it's going to fetch you like, the whole 21 marks, right? So don't spend too much time here, because questions can be ambiguous. Although we actually have a structure, and like recently we have seen that as actually after 2022, basically we have seen that XAT has done the work. They are trying to make sure there is as little ambiguity as possible when it comes to DM. It's become a lot more analytical, a lot more structural, and for that, to attempt questions, we have a structured approach. What we need to do here is, first we need to identify the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Stakeholders are people who are directly affected. Like Who are the people that are involved in this? Identify them. Then identify the objective. Objective is what? Objective is like they will give it to you in the question. If there is a situation that's happening and in the question they are asking us what is the best way to say like maximize the profits for the company. In that case, we have to understand that every other priority is secondary now. The first priority is we need to maximize the profits. So based on that, we have to choose the correct option also. If you want to learn more about this structured approach thing, which is actually very helpful, Sally ma'am has basically designed this approach. She explains all of this in detail. She explains how you can apply these approaches to the questions. You can find them on our YouTube channel, or if you want like a much more detailed thing, you can obviously join us that course. So identifying the stakeholders, identifying the objective, and how do we eliminate the wrong options? We know for a fact the options which are extreme, emotional, biased, or irrelevant are never the correct answer. Something which says like in a set where we have say like one person was accused of stealing. He was not proven to be a thief, but he was accused of say embezzling from the company. So one of the what should be done is the question. Now one option says he should be fired immediately. That is an extreme option, because until and unless we know for a fact that this guy has actually stolen, firing them would be extreme. So extreme options are never the answer. Emotional options. In many cases it will happen but this person has like an emotional connect with the other people, so he should not be fired. Or like in a family, if I say someone is a black sheep, so but like he is our family, so let him be here only. Those kind of answers which are which rely on emotions, they are also never the correct answer. Biased options which are like clearly favoring one person over the other, whereas the situation demands for like a more equal kind of a setup. So options which are like clearly favoring one over the other, those are never the answer. Irrelevant options are almost never the answer. Irrelevant options are again based on the question stem, like what is the question asking. If they ask us to maximize profits, we can't have something like increase the production, because increasing the production would mean like reducing the profits. So those are the basic ideas like how we can approach a DM set. If you want a more detailed answer for this, like how you can check out our YouTube channel where ma'am has like explained this in detail, or you can also check out our crash course. PYQs are very important for that DM. PYQs like after 22, so 23, 24, 25 and 26, you should be doing them. You'll get a very good idea like how the sets are, what you need to do, how you need to think. PYQs are gold mine. And also like we have the XAT mocks where we try to make sure like the DM cells that we put out are very relevant to what XAT is asking. So if you want to check them out, you can the link will be there in the description. You can check out our XAT mocks as well. Ideal attempt should be around 15 to 18 questions. If you are able to solve the all 21, then do it. That's not the thing. But the only thing here is you should not be expecting like a lot of marks here. Yeah, so that is it for this video, guys. I hope you found this video useful. So basically like all the sections we basically discussed what are the important things, what you should be focusing on, what you should not be getting hung up on. And if you apply these, I'm pretty sure you will be able to score well in that. So wishing you all the best for that, and with all the preparations that you're going through, and I'll see you guys in the next one.